Hey guys, this is John. My name is John Weldy, and I am from Religious Recovery Indianapolis chapter. I'm going to take a look here to see if I'm in frame. If I'm not in frame, I don't even know it yet. And you know something that I don't know. You know, you'd think that I would know exactly where to put the camera from. I've done this half a dozen times at least already. No, I'm still out of frame a little bit. Let me adjust it just a little. And let's see if that works. I was down too low. You see too much of my gut that way. That ain't good. I think it's because I sit in the chair a little bit differently every time. But, okay, there we go. I'm in frame nice now. Okay, so this is Religious Recovery Live. You know what? I forgot to put on my microphone. I'm going to put on my microphone so you get better sound. At least I hope it works this way. Okay, is that better? If somebody's listening, please tell me. Whoa, I just dropped it. If somebody's listening, please tell me that you can hear me. Because if you can't hear me, I'm in trouble right now. Because I really can't tell. Actually, you know what? I can do this just a little bit. I can turn. You can hear me. Oh, there we go. Okay, that worked. Okay, cool. So I'll have to cut that out when I go to the YouTube video, but that's okay. That's cool. So this is, my name is John Weldy, and this is Religious Recovery Live. First off, what is Religious Recovery? Religious Recovery is a support group for people who have been hurt by religion. We're not anti-religion in any way. In fact, many of us involved in religious recovery still very much enjoy being a part of religion. But we acknowledge that there are people from every religion. I mean, we primarily have a lot of people that were involved in some form of Christianity because we are from the U.S., specifically from the Midwest, in the Bible Belt. And so that's by far the primary religion in the area. But we're open to anybody, anywhere that has been hurt by religion. There are support groups all over the place for people who have been hurt by drugs, been hurt by alcohol, been hurt by gambling. You know, this is for people who have been hurt by religion in some way. And I mean, if we're really honest, anybody who has been around religion for a while probably has a story of how they've been hurt by religion. Sometimes it's something that you can brush under the floor and it's not really that big a deal, but sometimes it creates scars that go very, very deep. And so that's who we have a heart. We don't know all of the answers. Man, if you know who has all the answers, let me know. But we just want to support each other because we know that we're each on a journey, and we want to help each other down this journey and be a shoulder for each other to cry on. So I'm from the Indianapolis chapter of Religious Recovery. There's also one in Cincinnati. We're mostly in Indiana and Ohio right now, but we also have you can join through, well, not through Facebook, through a phone conference. So people anywhere. In fact, I think just yesterday was the very first international phone conference that we had. I'm not sure exactly how that went. I think Wayne is here listening. Received a new message with a question mark. Oh man, I just received a new message with a question mark. I don't know what that means, but if you're interested in, if religious recovery sounds interesting to you, then please leave a message in the comments down here and we will get back to you, or you can go to religiousrecovery.org. I am reading from the book Every Path Leads Home by Wayne Holmes. Wayne is our founder, and this book is kind of our manual, our handbook of religious recovery. You will see it's a very short book. That's why I love this book, because it's very short. It gets into very interesting and deep things very, very quickly, but it's also very short. This book is on sale on Amazon right now. I think it's about $6 plus shipping. It's a lovely book. I'm going to be reading tonight chapters 3 and 4. The chapters get very short, so I'm going to be reading 2 chapters tonight. Chapter 3 is Religious Gathering Leadership Types. I love you when you bow in your mosque, kneel in your temple, pray in your church, for you and I are sons of one religion, and it is the Spirit. Khalil Gibran. The religious gathering tree. Religious gatherings refer to major world religions which include Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Hinduism, and more. It also refers to the various factions and fractions that have grown within each type. Christianity, for example, includes Catholics, Protestants, and differing divisions of each. Catholicism includes Byzantine, traditional Roman and differing Eastern and Oriental Catholic churches. Protestant divisions include Lutherans, Anglicans, Calvinists, Congregational, Anabaptists, Baptist, Church of Christ, Holiness churches, and the list goes on and on. Denominations split over a variety of issues. What day of the week should be regarded as the Sabbath? Should we use wine or grape juice when we perform the Lord's Supper? Is the ability to speak in tongues required as a sign of holiness? Other religions experience the same schisms. Buddhism was originally an offshoot of Hinduism. Within Hinduism are at least 4 branches. Shaivites, oh man, I'm going to mess this up. I'm sorry, guys. Vaishnavas, Smartha, and Shaktism. See, Wayne, I'm going to make you read that next time. According to one article, Buddhism can be categorized into 3 main branches: the Theravada, the Mahayana, and the Varya. Oh, man, I sound like a terrible white boy right now. I'm really sorry, guys. This is new stuff to me. Really exploring world religions has been a very new thing to me. Just in the past couple years, I grew up a very conservative Baptist boy. I've been through very many different branches, about every single branch of the evangelical church you can think of. And I have really found a lot of friends very quickly. I live in Indianapolis, so it's a major city, so we have lots of different religions here, even though they're much smaller than Christianity. But still, we have a couple Sikh temples, or gurdwaras is what they're called. We have a couple mosques. We have some Buddhist centers, and I found people of excuse me, of many different religions, and I just really enjoy getting to know them. So I'm sorry I'm murdering your language. These differences aren't necessarily bad. In fact, many have brought spiritual awakening and renewal. If we view spirituality or religion as a tree, God, Jesus, Buddha, the divine, would be the trunk. The various world religions would be the first branches extending upwards, and the different splits within each world belief system would form branches growing upward, a heaven-bound tree of great strength and beauty. Does spirituality have a place among the branches of our tree? The answer lies in its ability to produce fruit. Does it bring about the qualities of love, compassion, acceptance, and peace? Does it produce better societies? Does it honor all beings? The answer is yes. Spirituality is a life force that courses through the tree. Other forms of religion have come and gone. They may have held a place among the branches for a time but failed to produce fruit. Eventually they withered and died or were pruned away. These include various cults, especially those where the religion was based on an individual claiming to have a direct line with the divine and demanded unswerving obedience from his or her followers. We've seen the tragedies that result from such blind faith, mass suicides in some cases. Leader-based religious gathering. There are advantages to traditional religious assemblies. For one, they form a community of friends based on common beliefs, goals, and expectations. Much like a home, religion promotes friendships that are often as strong or stronger than family ties. The minister, priest, or rabbi takes on a paternal or maternal role. As long as the leader is in tune with the institutional beliefs of their assembly, there is harmony. If the leader steps away from those beliefs, the members of the congregation question the leader's teachings. Is the leader correct, or are the teachings of the religious institution correct? If he fails to satisfy their concerns, he may eventually be removed from leadership. In this way, traditional religious groups have a system to prevent falling into a cult. Once removed, the leader may form a different religious organization. This has proved to be valuable over the centuries. Of course, the new gatherings might also deteriorate into cults. This is the challenge of the New Age and spiritual religious groups, and a word of caution is in order. Be careful of any religious gathering with a strong leader who has all the answers, is inflexible, judgmental, and critical of other religious beliefs. For me, that is a deal breaker. Perhaps in my writing, I come across as the leader I just described, one who sits in judgment. That is certainly not my intention. I understand how prone I am to making mistakes. I've made enough mistakes to warrant several lifetimes of bad karma or several levels of hell, whatever form of punishment you prefer. My goal is to examine religion with as little prejudice as possible, and if it appears wanting, to point to alternate ways to reach home. Along with the safety net, traditional religious institutions carry some counterproductive effects. Rigid observance often becomes the norm. Traditions that carried meaning to one generation are not easily dismissed to meet the needs of a changing world. Thinking is restricted. When changes are made, sometimes people rebel. By declaring to have the to have the way home, and often proclaiming with extreme vigor, this spoken or unspoken belief overrides all other possible roads. There is no wiggle room. The beliefs become so strong that people are willing to kill and die for their path. Holy wars, as ridiculous as that expression is, are fought in the name of religion and even love. Heaven help us. The business religious gatherings. Religion is a big business. Look at the size and beauty of churches, cathedrals, mosques, shrines, temples, and other religious meeting places. Where did the money come from to pay for the elaborate facilities? From believers. Those who stake their lives on the rightness of the religion. A particular leader and a set of rules invest bucket loads of money to finance the building and also the hierarchy to maintain the structure in its ministries. Many religions require members to tithe. Today, tithes are usually considered a tenth of a person's salary, but in past centuries the tithe was often a tenth of a crop or a tenth of a product. In Catholicism in the Middle Ages, the practice of paying for the lessening of sins known as indulgences became popular and profitable. The more people sinned, the more income the Catholic Church received. One cartoon from the 16th century depicted a line of sinners waiting to buy indulgences. More rules and regulations equated to more chances to break them, and thus the need to buy more. Catholicism does not have a monopoly on money manipulation. In 1987, a preacher named Oral Roberts climbed to the top of a prayer tower his ministry had built and declared he was not coming down until he raised $8 million for the support of God's ministry. He claimed God gave him that dollar amount, and if he failed to raise the money, God would take him home. Television evangelists raise money with emotional appeals. Remember Tammy Faye Baker? To their audiences with promises of God repaying them with better health, greater happiness, and more money. In some religious camps, hard work, sound investment, and saving are replaced by sacrificial giving to the needs of the ministry, with the promise that God will abundantly bless the giver with greater wealth and prosperity. When the financial blessing fails to appear, they conveniently point the finger away from their teachings and blame the individual for lack of faith, patience, or both. The abuse by ministers in their religious gatherings has been documented so often. It's a wonder there are still those willing to put their faith in any man of God who promises anything with a small donation to the ministry. When the religious gathering becomes a business-only venture, preying upon the emotional needs of its members in order to build their personal portfolio, the time comes to withdraw our faith from the person and his or her industry and examine what remains. Even in the lunacy of those paths that veered off course, there is often something to be salvaged. Yes, the bureaucracy may have been misguided, but within the deception we often find a gem of truth, a simpler path, or a glimmer of hope. Oral Roberts launched his ministry with simple words of hope. Something good is going to happen to you. Instead of preaching condemnation, hell, and evil, he offered hope. Those deceived by leaders can retain the positive and release the negative. By listening to the voice of God within, they will know when it's time to leave a religious group or a religious leader. Most religious organizations that become business-based are often also leader-based. No group, however, is exempt. The lure for money, power, and prestige is ever present. With diligence, avoiding the temptations is possible. A word of caution is in order. I'm not saying using wise business practices to run a religious organization is not recommended, but when the spiritual is missing or faked, and sometimes it's hard to tell, and all that's left is the business of religion without the soul, it's time to pack up shop. After reading a very reflective article about Randy Roberts Potts, the gay grandson of Oral Roberts, I believe in his senior years, Oral Roberts may have returned to the simple message of his roots. At least, I hope so. The social religious gathering. Being social is good. There is nothing colder than an unfriendly gathering, especially when a religious meeting becomes exclusive. There is always the danger that when only those who believe, act, and dress according to the spoken or unspoken rules gather, they run the risk of limiting their influence to the general public. Sometimes this happens figuratively, and in some situations it happens literally, so that no one is permitted without some sort of screening procedure, as is the case in religious cults. You want to be part of our religious circle? Fine, but first you have to go through blank. Religious organizations should be spiritual first, social second. With fellowship, openness, acceptance, and non-judgmental love and forgiveness, religious gatherings flourish. With judgment, criticism, exclusion, and rigidity, religious groups lose spirituality and become social organizations. The wise religious leader battles to bring change, but often with limited results. Why have many religious gatherings appealed to only one element of society? Why have the buildings been filled with cookie-cutter members who spoke, thought, and looked alike? Religious assemblies fill the role of social groups, and people enjoy socializing with their own kind. Wouldn't it be better to have a mix of races, religions, and ideas working together to discover the spiritual answers sought by all religions throughout time? Yes, we tend to associate with like-minded people, but the good news is that most assemblies now welcome all types of people. Still, the mix of religions is rarely found. The religious gathering of the nation. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That phrase is recognized by Americans as part of the Pledge of Allegiance. It does not spell out what God we are under, be it the Jewish God, the Christian God, or some other God of some other religion. Yet people have argued to have the phrase under God removed or preserved. Our nation was founded upon religious freedom. The fear from some appears to be that Christianity in America will one day mean the same, a theocracy. In other people's minds, Christianity and America are synonymous, and their fear is that someday we will no longer be a Christian nation. I don't want to weigh in on the rightness of removing or retaining the phrase. Smarter minds than mine can sort through that question. I also understand that America leads the way in religious tolerance, and I believe always will. I don't want to criticize, but to encourage. Let's go even further than we have in the past. Let's lead the way by creating assemblies that embrace the faiths of all nations. I don't believe we will ever become a one-religion nation. The nation of Israel has a national religion, and I see no getting around it, at least not in the near future. They have also faced great tribulation throughout their history, hated by other nations, constant wars and fighting. They face problems that other nations have avoided. I'm not saying they're wrong or right. I accept their right to believe as they do. I don't have to agree with them. Since I grew up in a Christian home and studied the Bible, I respect the Old Testament and its wisdom. I disagree with them, however, when they believe, like other religions, they have a monopoly on the divine. The hospital religious gathering. I recall an incident that happened years ago. An elderly man sat unattended in a wheelchair on an elevator. People got on, people got off. No one paid particular notice. He rode up and down all day until he expired. His death wasn't discovered until late evening. Ironically, the elevator he rode to his death was located inside a hospital. The place he had gone for help and health became the place that delivered neither. I try to avoid religious groups that operate in the same way. As people go through the ups and downs of life, they often seek help and health from religious organizations. Accidents happen, of course, but when religious gatherings fail to notice those who are about to spiritually expire, we wonder what went wrong. I recall an old expression about the church being the only organization that buries its wounded. Most religious organizations incorporate some form of healing in their beliefs. The range includes healing prayers, laying on of hands, revival-style healing where people are slain in the spirit, emotional healing, spiritual healing, sometimes conducted through confession or altar calls, and newer forms of healing such as acupuncture, Reiki? Sorry if I messed that up. Physical medical diagnosis, and more. One of the most dramatic forms of healing is the exorcism. When considering the religious organization, the form of healing a group subscribes to determines, at least in part, the comfort zone of its audience. I have never been comfortable with flamboyant healers. Others have. I'm not completely comfortable with some of the newer forms either. In fact, I'm most comfortable with perhaps the mildest form of healing, spiritual healing. Specifically, I believe that forgiveness can heal individuals and the world of the majority of the afflictions that plague us. Others are perfectly comfortable with different forms of healing, and perhaps one day I will be too. The issue here is not right or wrong, it's simply what a person resonates with. We don't want to get stuck on an elevator going nowhere. But at the same time, stretching our comfort zone can lead to experiences that enrich our lives. When I think about healing, I'm drawn to the story of Dumbo, the Disney cartoon character, and his oversized ears. So large, in fact, were his ears that they caused mishap and misery. His only friend, Timothy Q. Mouse, tried to cheer him by taking him to see his mother. On the return home, they drink from a water bucket that was accidentally laced with champagne. The next morning, the pair find themselves in a tree, uncertain how they got there. Timothy is convinced that Dumbo, the baby elephant, flew them there, using his oversized ears. Timothy Mouse convinces Dumbo he can fly by the use of a magical feather. If he holds on to the feather, he has the ability to soar. At the end of the story, Dumbo loses the feather, but Timothy convinces him there was never anything magical about the feather, and that he still has the ability to fly. Is religious healing no more than a magical feather? For that matter, is physical healing with doctors and hospitals also not based in part on the belief of the patient that modern medicine, pills, surgery, physical therapy will cure them? Another magical feather? I don't know. But if it works, what difference does it make? Hold on to the feather as long as you need. If it stops working, grab something else. I've been fortunate in that I've lived a healthy physical life, but like others, I needed healing from religious pain and disease. I've grasped at feathers, held on, and discovered the ability to soar above religion. But I've also made it on my own without the props, discovering that the ability to soar was within me all the time. We know the way home. We just have to trust our inner guide. The flock-based religious gathering. Earlier, we considered the 12-step spiritual meeting referring to programs such as Alcoholics Anonymous. They meet wherever they can find inexpensive rent. They may have one or two individuals who organize the initial meeting, but it isn't long before the meetings are overseen by the attendees themselves. General guidelines are used instead of commandments or rules. The one exception might be the adherent to complete anonymity. Their meetings survive solely on the participation of those who attend. No one is required to speak, but all are welcome to share. Without participation, the meetings would die. Amazing. No preacher, no priests, yet the people come to share, heal, love, socialize, and receive nearly everything you would want from a spiritual gathering. I'm not opposed to religion. In fact, one of my goals is for people to appreciate what religious faith has to offer in spite of whatever hurts. In the name of religion may have committed, and whatever hurts in the name of religion may have been committed against them. Perhaps a new 12-step program, Religious Recovery, could be formed to help those who have been injured and turned away from their birth religions. Lately, I seem to have come across a number of agnostics. Good. Better to have someone who's uncertain than one who claims to have all the answers and wants to pound them into me. The agnostics I've met are honest. When I am most vulnerable, I admit, at least to myself, there is no way to know for certain if there is a higher power. I have not met the divine face to face. I have not literally heard his or her voice. Personal experiences have led me to believe in a divine other, but to be able to show incontrovertible proof is not possible. I also find hope in knowing that the pursuit of the divine is found in all nations. So I learn from those who are seeking just like I am. That's why I like the idea of a flock-based assembly where every man, woman, and child is a priest, where all share and where criticism is discouraged, love is exchanged, hope happens, and all are welcome. For some, the 12-step meeting appears to be traditional. People come for a time, heal and move, or transitional. People come for a time, heal and move on, no problem. Others who attend heal, fall in love with the program, and choose to stay to help. It doesn't matter. Whenever programs are involved, difficulties arise, but in spite of the people, the 12-step programs succeed. There is a place for the 12-step spiritual gathering, a place for simple, back to the basics, caring for one another's needs through love and through listening, and offering simple advice in a take what you like and leave the rest formula. An unspoken premise in 12-step meetings is that people know intuitively what advice to take and what to leave. This releases the person sharing from owning another's healing. My situation may be similar to yours, but it can't be exactly the same. What works for me may not work for you. That's okay. It's not my job to fix anyone except myself. Besides, someone else may benefit from my sharing, and often the one who benefits the most is the individual who shares. So that's the end of the chapter on religious gatherings. I think it's really interesting that, we've all seen religious gatherings of different types, and I'm going to move a little bit here because my foot's falling asleep. We've all seen religious gatherings of different types. I love how Wayne lists the 12-step gathering as one of those spiritual gatherings. I mean, I grew up in a Christian background. If you talk to Christians and said, what does church look like? Church is what you go to. You go to church. You go to church. That's what you do. And if you ask them what church looks like, they would not, I don't think they would describe, I think it would be very few Christians who would describe it looks like a 12-step program. But what I've come to believe about what church is actually very similar to that. A place where everybody participates. And that can only happen in a smaller group. You can't really have a place where everybody participates when there's 300 people there. What are they going to do, and how long are they going to do it for? It's not going to work that way. But I've gotten a whole lot out of so far. I hope you guys are interested in joining in Religious Recovery. I've got a whole lot out of the Religious Recovery group I've been a part of for just the past few months. Chapter number 4, Religious Gatherings at Home. But when you pray, go into your room and close the door. Jesus, Matthew 6:6. Solitary services. For a number of years, my foot is asleep. It's bothering me. Solitary services. For a number of years, I attended a private church, which I call Bedside Baptist, Church of the Inner Spring. I've never been a Baptist. I just like the alliteration. Other religious gatherings exist, and perhaps you have attended one of these private meetings: Mattress Methodist, Closet Calvinist, Lazy Boy Lutheran, or Couch Potato Catholic. The names abound, and these personal religious gatherings aren't all Christian. There are the Home Hindu, the Brookside Buddha, the Isolated Islam, and the Solitary Shaman. Is it possible to hold private religious gathering services where only one attends? Religion would argue, no. A religious meeting entails the coming together of community for worship, instruction, and fellowship or community. Spirituality says, yes, it is possible. For the spiritual person, a religious gathering isn't about an external building but an internal relationship. Services have their place, but nothing substitutes for seeking the divine within. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. He never raised money to build a sanctuary, never hired a publicist, and he never sought the limelight. He spoke to those who would listen. He healed those who came to him. Quite often, he pulled away from the crowd and sought sanctuary and solitude in meditation and prayer. He battled temptation in the wilderness alone. Nature was his synagogue, the earth his altar, and the sky the open dome of his cathedral. I worship at my own private religious gathering, usually in the early morning hours when I'm supposed to be sleeping. In recent years, these services have become more meaningful, but there was a time when my private communion with the divine paled in comparison to a traditional gathering, at least in some respects. I've always enjoyed spiritual music, songs that speak of the divine. I've had different favorites, but the threads that run through them are emotional, inspirational, and insightful. In my private religious gatherings, the music was, for the most part, absent. There were no sermons in my private meetings, no lectures, no one instructing me on right and wrong, no one collecting money, and no weekly announcements. Just me, the bed sheets, and the ceiling. Disillusioned. This was the period when religion had disillusioned me. Shortly before my marriage came to an end, I left the church of my childhood, where I had served as a staff minister for 3 years. After trying a variety of religious institutions and deciding on a religious group with a more liberal theology and music program, I found myself disappointed that the scope of their acceptance wasn't more limited than I had hoped and needed. That's when I discovered the prostrate Presbyterian pew. These things are hard to say, Wayne. That's when I discovered the prostrate Presbyterian pew, otherwise known as my bed. Many people can relate to my experience and have similar stories to share of their own disappointments with religious organizations. Morning quiet times were spent in prayer, which consisted in reciting a list of names of people I prayed for. No Bible reading, little or no meditation, and little or no spiritual growth. To a close friend, I jokingly confided I had become a heathen. During that desert time, my faith in religion bottomed out. Nevertheless, I was still spiritual. Still held to the simple idea that something greater than myself was in charge of the universe, but I questioned religion and authority. Due to my divorce, I was no longer accepted as a minister in my former denomination. I was not good enough. I understood and acknowledged their decision, but I could not accept their judgmental attitudes. It's one thing to be told you did wrong, quite another to be told you are wrong. New light. I found meaning in my private meetings only after I found my way back to a more traditional religious gathering, which is often the case. My experience caused me to doubt many of my beliefs. When I found a religious group that accepted those doubts, in fact, often encouraged me to think for myself, I found a new light and new hope. Since then, my morning quiet times have become a rich experience. I often wake between the hours of 4 and 6. Once my eyes focus, I begin reading. Now, I rarely read from the Bible. Years of reading the Bible through from beginning to end, Bible memorization and Bible stories gave me a wealth of knowledge to draw upon. What I lacked was a broader base of understanding. That's when my attention was drawn to Oprah, Wayne Dyer, and a new way of understanding. I was familiar with the New Age movement. What was all the hoopla? Was there anything to it? My prior church experience dismissed New Age thought. Except for Wayne Dyer, I wasn't familiar with New Age authors. The only title that came to mind was a book written in the 1980s by Shirley MacLaine. When she came out with her book Out on a Limb, a part of the Christian community abhorred her teachings and labeled them as heresy. In fact, F. LaGard Smith authored a book titled Out on a Broken Limb. But MacLaine's book had been written in the 1980s, and I wanted to discover what was currently popular. There was plenty of material available, and before long I was reading books that stretched my beliefs and my credulity. Some authors claimed their works were channeled from sources outside the 5 senses. Their claim went beyond inspiration or the writer's name to the realm of the spirits, guides, and in some cases divine authority. How could I accept these works as being from God? But don't religions ask for some act of faith that God spoke directly to man thousands of years ago? To believe God could and did speak to men in the past, but no longer does so in the present, seems a greater sense of credulity. Arguments arise claiming if God were to speak today, then those words must be measured against the Bible, as if that was God's final word to our planet. Note that I am, for the moment, speaking from a Christian background, ignoring the other world religions that believe they have an exclusive claim on God and His Word. But what applies to one applies to the others. What seems to be overlooked by most Christians is the new religious truth that was brought to the world through John the Baptist, Jesus, and his apostles. At some point, it seems the age of revelation was closed, yet it seems as if Martin Luther said, taught, and demonstrated that it was not. Others followed who also claimed, indeed, if not by their words, that the divine other was still speaking. Today, the concept that divine revelation is closed seems to be a passé belief. The teachings of Jesus ruffled a lot of feathers in the spiritual community of his day. In fact, at one point they asked if Jesus wasn't the son of Joseph, and if so, how could he claim to be from heaven and make such wild statements? In one passage of Scripture, Jesus took the law and added to it. He understood the deeper spiritual meaning behind the law and tried to explain it to his listeners. Not only should you not kill, but to be angry with a brother or sister is a mistake. Why? Because murder begins with anger. So to harbor anger is to withhold love, and love was the fulfilling of the law. If we believe Jesus brought in new spiritual truth, or if we believe Moses delivered new words from God, then is it not reasonable to believe that the divine still communicates today? Or has the divine run out of things to say? Even with the new truth that Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, and Buddha brought into the world, no one seems to agree about what that truth is and how to apply it. Take the Christian community, for example. Some faiths believe in immersion as the only form of baptism. Some don't. Some believe in foot washings, others don't. Some speak in tongues. Who is right? Who is wrong? Shouldn't the foundation of faith begin with love and proceed with forgiveness toward all beings, including ourselves, and also be based on acceptance and gratitude? I explored other writers, other religions, and other thought systems. For years I'd heard about A Course in Miracles, so I delved into it. By recommendation or by happenstance, I discovered the writings of other spiritual teachers. Some teachers proved meaningful and helpful, others not so much. After reading books that taught ways to draw closer to the divine, I opened my mind to meditation and prayer, usually focused more on the former. I was burned out from years of praying for people and found myself developing a mindset of, God knows what I need to ask before I ask. I may not know what it is that I need, so I'll ask the divine to show me. Like many other people, I struggled with meditation. Years ago, I'd read Richard Foster's book, A Celebration of Discipline, an excellent guide to the traditional spiritual disciplines, including meditation, but I'd forgotten about that book and its methods. Upon the recommendation of a friend, I attended a local Zen center to discover the secrets of the religions of the East. There were no secrets. Simply concentrate on the breath in an effort to still the mad monkey mind. The challenge proved to be nearly impossible. After opening with a few chants, we stayed in silence for 80 minutes. After the session, I chatted with one of the leaders. I can't empty my mind, I confessed. Who said you're supposed to? I thought that was the idea. If you empty your mind, think nothing, you'll be dead. I'd never thought that idea, but he was right. The idea is to still the mind, focus the mind, quiet the raging thoughts. I nodded, feeling I could do that. Try noticing your thoughts as if you're an observer. You hear the horn blast from the car outside, try not to react. Don't get frustrated because you're no longer focused on your breath. In your mind, say to yourself, I hear a car horn. Then immediately return to the breath. The power of meditation comes from quieting the mind until the spirit calms, allowing us to see beyond our everyday concerns in order to see the larger picture. Meditation allows for contemplation, which powerfully transforms our problem-solving abilities. When I'm speaking, writing, or teaching, I use meditation contemplation to prepare. Meditation allows each of us to connect to our intuition and higher power. We can hear the divine whispers, chaos created by the anxious mind, tries to overpower the voice of the divine, but that voice is still there, just more difficult to hear. In addition, the ego brings to mind 1,000 things that need to be done, should be done, ought to be done, situations that could have, would have, should have been different if only this or that had been done instead. But in meditation, we strive to silence the chaos, matters of past, future, the ego, and all other interruptions to the present moment. A good way to begin is to concentrate on the breath. If you take a glass with sediment in the bottom and swirl it, the water becomes murky. If you stop swirling and allow the debris to settle, the water clears and vision opens. Meditation and contemplation works the same way. By allowing the muck to settle, we can examine a situation more closely. And by listening for the divine voice, we gain understanding and direction. All of this can be accomplished in the privacy of your home. Jesus said that when we pray, we should go into our room and shut the door. That's not to say we can't experience divine presence in nature, or at religious institutions, or in a million other places and situations. But when we want one-on-one time to seek answers or to draw closer, alone time brings the results we seek. A missed appointment. A number of years ago, before the modern ubiquity of cell phones, I scheduled a meeting with a friend at a local restaurant. I arrived early and asked if anyone had arrived looking for me. To their knowledge, no one had, but I was invited to look around. Satisfied that I had arrived first, I took my seat. I waited a short while and then decided to use the restroom. When I returned, my table was still empty. I decided my friend had forgotten or something had come up. I used the payphone and called. Maybe I had written down the wrong date. I got the answering machine. I left a message, returned to my seat, waited a while longer, ate, and left. At home, I discovered a message on my answering machine. "Wayne," the voice of my friend said, "I was there. I got there a few minutes after the hour and looked for you." How could that be? I wondered. But it happened. We were in the same restaurant at the same time, evidently in different areas, and we failed to connect. There are times in prayer and meditation when I feel the same way. I work to quiet my mind and connect with the divine. Yet the noise and activity of my mind obstruct my connection with the divine, with me, within me, speaking softly, waiting for me to settle into a place where I can hear his voice, feel her presence, and know. When I find myself struggling with quiet time, my restaurant experience reminds me to be still and know. Just as my friend had been present in the restaurant, yet we failed to connect, the divine is always present, and a little patience and attentive listening can help make the connection. A simple sentence from A Course in Miracles says it in slightly a different way. "Into your presence would I enter now." That simple phrase allows me to make a mental and sometimes emotional shift. When I lie in bed in the morning preparing for bedside worship, I say the words in my head and in my heart with just a slight variation. "Into your presence I would enter now." I do not define who or what that presence is in religious terms, but it is my higher power. That which was and shall always be, that which created me, sustains me, loves me, and abides in me, no matter what. Is it possible to have a religious gathering of one? Yes, especially for those with multiple personalities. I wrote that last sentence in jest, but truth is we all have multiple personalities. All things spiritual begin and ultimately end with we. So that's the end of chapter 4. Next week we'll do chapter 5, Light Guides the Way, and chapter 6, Forgiveness, A Path to Peace. And I think they're even a little bit shorter than the chapters from this week were. So if any of that is interesting to you, and if you would like to connect with Religious Recovery, then please leave us a message in the comments or send us a message on this Facebook. You send a message to us if you would like to connect, or go to religiousrecovery.org. Let me see. You can also sign up at religiousrecovery.org. You can sign up for the Religious Recovery newsletter. We have something that we send out every week. And there is currently, if you're interested in a religious recovery group and you don't live in Indiana or Ohio, there is currently a group that meets the 4th Tuesday of every month via teleconference. And you're welcome to be a part of that group. For more information, just leave a message here in the comments. Wayne's books, both books, the book that I was reading, Every Path Leads Home, and his other book, Strength for the Journey Home, both of them are on sale at Amazon right now. So check them out. Wayne Holmes, Holmes. All right. Well, I appreciate spending time with you guys. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and either Wayne or I will get to them. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.